Welcome everyone to our NCAA social series. I'm Andy Katz. I'm pleased to be joined by Donna Ledwin. She is the commissioner of the Allegheny Mountain Collegiate Conference, and Danielle O'Leary. She is the assistant athletic director at William Peace University in Raleigh, North Carolina. Now in Division III, this conference, the AMCC, has been at the forefront of LGBTQ issues in the OneTeam program. All member institutions of the AMCC are on board. We're going to dive deeper into what the OneTeam program is, how other conferences can adopt it. But before we do that, we want to get to the basis of why there was a need and where that came from. And let's start, Donna, with you. At what point did you decide that this was a critical issue to get behind?
Thanks, Andy. I think a real catalyst for me was when, I've been in college athletics for 30 years as an athletic director and then conference commissioner. I've had many friends, colleagues in the LGBTQ community, but it really wasn't until my son came out as transgender that it really, really took a personal turn for me. And I was forced to rethink a lot of the way I approach the world, approach my job, and it inspired me. He inspired me to do more in this area. So I started having conversations, and really the first conversations were about what it means to be transgender. Because 12 years ago when he came out, there was not a lot of knowledge about this. Folks were just starting to understand. It just became more of a topic of this discussion. You know, I think Caitlyn Jenner was a big catalyst in this coming out. And so, but a big person for me was one night watching, I think it was 60 Minutes, and they did an interview with Skylar Baylor, who is a transgender swimmer at Harvard. And I was really captivated by the interview. And I thought, this is something we all need to hear about what Harvard did to welcome Skylar and into that space as a transgender athlete. So I decided that at one of our conference meetings, I would put together a little program about this. I showed the interview with Skylar, and then I invited Pat Miller, who I'm not sure if she's still at Harvard or if she's retired, who was the senior associate athletic director at Harvard, to join us she came in on speakerphone at that time, and talk more, like, how did this happen? And talk to us about what the department did. I thought it was very important to have a first person account of this. And it started the conversation. Following up to that, I had a SAC meeting, Student Athlete Advisory Committee. And we began talking also about, it probably wasn't just LGBTQ issues, but it may have been bias in general. But what really struck me in that meeting with our student athletes was a very honest conversation with some men's soccer players who just threw out there that, you know, the F word is the go-to slur on the soccer field. And I was completely horrified. Pollyanna was really horrified here. And I thought, you know, we really have to take this further. That just did not sit well with me at all, that our student athletes could think that's okay. And probably around that time is when we had a survey in Division III on diversity issues. And one of the big things that came out of that survey was the desire for folks to be able to do more, to have more education on supporting the LGBT community. We have a lot of allies in Division III, but a lot of them just don't know where to start or how to be better. We also heard from our members of our LGBT community, students, staff, coaches, who said, you know what, we need to be supported better. So the Division III working group on LGBTQ issues took that, and from there, the OneTeam program was born, and I never hesitated to think that the AMCC would be involved with OneTeam.
All right, so pause right there, because we're going to dive deeper into what it is and how effective it can be. Danielle, I want to bring you in as a former head coach, student athlete, now administrator, where and when did you see the need for an advocacy group like this?
Right. So as a student athlete, my biggest support group was my coaches and my administrators. As I transitioned into coaching, I saw that not everybody has that same support group. I transitioned here to Mount Aloysius, and the OneTeam banners and the swag and everything came out and was shipped, and nobody knew what to do with it. And I'll say at the time, we probably didn't have the best reaction to what OneTeam is. So when the opportunity came to apply to be a facilitator, I jumped right at it because I knew that on our campus at that time, we didn't have a support group for our student athletes, for our students in general. And I thought we can't be the only institution that's in this same boat. So how can we change that? And it really has snowballed since then of having other institutions and other departments really jump on and want us to come and do the training. So I think it's very clear that it was needed, especially in Division III right now.
All right, so let's peel it back. What is it?
So OneTeam is a program. It's a Division III program. I say that extremely proudly. We're the only division that is doing something like this. Not that we don't want Divisions I and II to join us. We would love it if it were association-wide. But it is a brainchild of Division III and the LGBTQ working group. And it's a program designed to promote inclusion and respect for our student athletes, coaches, and administrators in the LGBTQ community, to be part of the, a really vibrant, acknowledged part of the athletic department and probably campus community by extension, but, to make sure that they are respected and acknowledged and included and welcomed. The importance of this, I don't think is rocket science. If you are afraid to hide who you are, if you're afraid of being fired, if you're afraid of being ridiculed or bullied or really physically hurt, how can you possibly do your best job? Whether it's as a student athlete in the classroom or on the field or as a coach, you can't. So that welcoming, inclusive, respectful environment is critical because we want every person in our athletic departments to be the best they can be. And that's the crux of OneTeam.
So Danielle, one thing that I think is critical here, not just with this program, but in our college campuses, greater society, down to the high school and below, that should be taken seriously. And I know it sounds simplistic, but when someone says, what are your pronouns? How do you want to be addressed? It's not a joke. And, clearly we need to cross that barrier to where coaches, administrators, peers respect what you want to be called at a base level. So how do you translate that to the student athlete, to the coach, who may be coming from, a different environment that was never addressed? How do you start there?
Well, and that's really one of the main goals of the OneTeam program is to spark that conversation. And we see a lot of times it happens with some of our older coaches that are uncomfortable having these conversations. And it comes back simply to respect. As a coach, how do you want to be referred to? Do you want people to call you Coach Katz? Do you want people to call you Andy? And that's your first day as a coach, and an administrator usually is, hey, this is what I want you to call me. This is how I want to be addressed. We also say that our student athletes are really at the forefront of a lot of these issues. So it's almost like if you want to continue in this career, you have to be at the forefront too as a coach and an administrator, and using proper pronouns and being respectful. That's going to hold your job sometimes. So just getting on board with that and getting used to using them. I mean, the easiest thing we say is put it in your email signature. It shows that you're an ally and that you understand where people are coming from. And sometimes even sparks the conversation with other people of why your pronouns are in your email address or your signature.
And I think that, you know, a lot of us, even though, especially in the media, you know, if someone wants to use the pronoun they, you know, that person deserves that respect. And if that person is referred to as he or she instead of they, then you're not respecting that person if you're talking about that person when they're not present. And, you know, we obviously have to get to a point where if an athlete at a news conference, you know, a coach is talking about this particular player and references they versus he or she, you know, that could be another step when we get to that point. You know, in terms of the education of that, Donna, where are we?
Well, I think we're getting better. I mean, the more institutions, departments that engage in OneTeam, the more we spread that word. I think we have to do work with our sports information directors. But I think we are getting there. And really, truly, we appreciate your inviting us into this, because it's just one more outlet for us to talk to folks about this topic, and it just helps make us better the more we talk about it. It's easy for us to forget, me, straight cisgender woman, to forget that not everyone is straight and cisgender, and we speak to the world that way. And I think if we you know, the more we have these conversations like we're having right now, the more OneTeam programs we do, the more we're raising awareness that there's a lot of different people in the world, and everyone deserves the respect that they're asking for, and we need to give it to them. Again, it just comes down to being, you know, allowing people to be the best they can be, so the whole team, the whole department, the whole institution can be the best it can be.
You know, Donna, you just sparked something when you said this about sports information directors, who I think obviously do unbelievable work, and, you know, it's a thankless job. But I can't remember the time that I've ever seen, so if someone's out there, you can certainly correct me, where I've seen pronouns in a bio profile, in a media guide, and you know, or in a news release. And that could be a critical aspect, not just in D3, not just in the AMCC, but really for COSIDA to really address that when you are putting together your media guide, I don't care what division, I don't care what sport, that at the bottom of every person, you list how they want to be addressed as an individual. And that could be a remarkable first step in the greater space in helping play-by-play, analysts, broadcasters, you know, I'm just to take it from this step to make it more mainstream. You are administrator, Danielle. I mean, where do we go in terms of trying to take that step of getting it on the media side to get it out in the public space?
Well, I think you bring up a good point. Like, there's so many layers to this. And even if you think that, oh, we're doing the best, we're the best in Division III, you know, the AMCC everybody's gone through OneTeam training. There's still work to do. There's always still work to do. There's something extra you can do. And, you know, with the AMCC, we changed our opening address to say family and friends and fans, rather than ladies and gentlemen. So it's just being able to really explore your own policies and dive into what you're currently doing and what you possibly can be doing. And that's a plug for OneTeam. If you think you're doing the best, have a OneTeam session and we'll talk about what else you could possibly be doing and what other avenues you could explore to be more inclusive. But you have to be willing to take the first step.
And I'll tell you, Donna, I mean, social media, Twitter, it's not the real world. It's a small percentage of people in the United States and beyond who are on it, yet sometimes we're directed by it. And I think that one thing that I know you know this, but I think we can never assume that someone wants to be addressed the way we assume that they would by just natural assumptions. So how did you take all that we're discussing here and then some, and apply it to a training to your member institutions and package that into something that can be taken from conference to conference into Division III and hopefully beyond?
Well, and I will say again, we didn't package this. We were given a terrific program template that was put together through the efforts of Louise McCleary and our Division III staff, Nevin Capel and Pat Griffin, who are pioneers in this area of LGBTQ inclusion, put together this LGBTQ X's and O's program. And Danielle and I simply take that and we kind of bring it alive onto campuses. And we talk about why it's so important to self-educate. We provide information about how you do that. I will tell you right now, the NCAA Inclusion Forum is fantastic. It's been done year in, year out for a number of years now. Amy Wilson, Director of Inclusion, and her team do an incredible job. I learn tons of new stuff every year, and it's free. It's virtual the past couple of years, and everyone should, if you don't do OneTeam, do the Inclusion Forum. You will learn so much, and it's obviously wide-ranging beyond the LGBTQ space. But we try to give, we try to, number one, encourage folks to self-educate. So as well as, on legal issues in your state, where are the, what are the laws in your state? Because do they apply to protections on employment, housing, education? We want you to self-educate with the Inclusion Forum. But then we also want you to show it. That's what we encourage you to do too. It's one thing to know it, it's another thing to show it. So I have on my lapel, it's the OneTeam pin. We've given that out to everybody. We also had an AMCC logo in the rainbow colors that we've given out to folks. Just those little signs. I will wear at every single championship and event in my conference that I go to, I wear this. I want to show people, without having to say the words, that I'm an ally. This speaks volumes. Stickers that are on your laptop or on your door. There are things we help folks learn about to not just educate themselves, but show others that they care and they're supportive, and the community really needs that.
So Donna, the one thing that you mentioned, and I'm curious, Danielle, if you've seen this on campuses you've worked or teams that you've played on, you always hear when the group is put together at the beginning of a season, the guidelines, the rules, everything that we expect, the expectations, the goals. At what point when that team is gathered together, in preseason, whatever time of the year that may be, is it addressed of how everyone should be addressed in terms of how they want to be addressed, whether this is a men's team, a women's team, you name it? When are those guidelines, if you will, because you mentioned the men's soccer, Donna, what was their go-to slur? When is that addressed by the coach, by maybe the administrator of the sport? When is that discussed?
I think, the beginning of the year, the beginning of the season, when you do those preseason meetings, that is the best time. In the conference, we created our own anti-bias and anti-harassment policy. And it's definitely something that every institution in our conference can fall back on. But then you need to adapt it for each team as well. And it has to be a conversation that coaches and administrators are having with their teams and their student athletes. I think as we're kind of coming out of a pandemic, hopefully a little bit, and we're able to gather in larger groups, it's a good time for administrators to pull all your student athletes together and say, this is our policy, we're going to stick to it, and we're going to have, zero tolerance for anything, any sort of language that's not inclusive. And these are going to be the repercussions for it. And then stick to it too. We say, in the trainings, your policy is your backbone. stick to those policies as much as possible. Those preseason meetings are also a really good time for somebody to raise their hand and say, this is how I'd want to be referred to. And these are my preferred pronouns. And it does spark that conversation of what does that look like on our team? And then might even open the door for somebody to say, okay, we really do need a OneTeam training because this is what's in front of us. And from experience, that's kind of how a lot of this has come about, is people have reached out and said, we might have a transgender student athlete on our campus next year. We really need a training to go through what's our policy look like? How do we help this student athlete as much as possible? So
I would like to add on that, coming back to my comment that, we look through the world in our own eyes, and, most of the world, if I'm transferring, who I am to the rest of the world and doing the rest of the world a disservice. To this day still, everyday slurs against the LGBTQ community are still okay. That's so gay is a disparaging comment. The casual use of the F word. She plays like a man. She looks like a man. These are all very disparaging comments that need to be called out. And I think that's OneTeam. OneTeam gets into case studies. We don't just throw out, we do provide strategies. We do provide a framework for approaching, but then we get into case studies. And that, I think Danielle would agree, is where we have our real conversations and really see our folks getting what we're sharing. And I think invariably we find that they do. But it's important to put it in that real world context, and to be, if nothing else, encouraging folks to call this out. Don't accept it as okay, because someone is being hurt. You don't know if it's that person or someone they're very close to, but you are being hurtful, and in the end, that is not allowing them to be their best self. And we've got to do better in this area.
Well, and here's the thing, Danielle, and maybe this isn't fair by me, but I don't think we can expect coaches, I don't care how old they are, to do this on their own, and think that it's going to be either appropriate or handled correctly. So how critical is it? And I'm curious if this happens in the AMCC or other, if you know of any other Division III conferences, is it incumbent upon an administrator or a mental health professional or someone, a counselor, someone, to be there in that team meeting to ensure that it's handled correctly?
I think the administrator plays a huge role in all of this. Donna referenced the case studies. The answer in almost every case study is you have to include your administrator in the conversation, and use your resources on campus. Whether you have them on your campus or they're in your community, use the resources that are available to you. Include the clubs on your campus, right? Include your counselors on campus, just so everybody's on the same page with the message that you're trying to send to your team.
Donna, what do you tell your member institutions?
I tell them that allies must be helpers. We can't, I think a lot of folks, and I don't care if it's in the LGBTQ community, the Black community, name your marginalized community. Allies need help, but they have to be the helpers. They can't rely on those folks to do all the teaching, to do all the speaking up, because they're the ones, the marginalized folks are the ones who are taking this, and to then have to turn around and teach it, that's asking an awful lot. So I tell my folks, they have to step up. They have to thank a student who walks into their office and says, I'm having this issue, I'm gay, and blah, 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 right? I've been rejected by my family because I told them. And, we tell them the first thing, you say, thank you for coming to me. Can you explain a little bit more about what you mean and what you need? And just encouraging folks to have that door open, send that message that you can talk to me, and I might not have the answer, but I can help you find it. I'll do my very best to help you find it. That's what I think I want our folks at the end of the day to be doing. OneTeam, in my opinion, if you've gone through OneTeam, you know, it's the Maya Angelou quote. We do the best we can until we know better. But once we know better, we have to do better. And that's at the end of the day, at the end of every OneTeam program that Danielle and I have done, that's the message I want to leave people with.
You know, Danielle, I'm a huge proponent of, you know, that you can always be demanding as a coach, but never, ever demeaning. And it's not woke and all this other ridiculous catchwords. It's being respectful. It's being kind. And respect to me is the key word. Just like a coach, you brought up, how do you want to be addressed? And the coach says, oh, you're not being respectful because you're not calling me coach. Well, wait a minute. You're not being respectful to me as a human being. Right. So, there are key trigger words that I think are critical in a positive way. And I'm curious, just in that word, respect, how often has that come up where someone does not feel respected as, who they are as a member of this team, this university, this world, that they should be treated respectfully?
That's tough because I think most people that get into coaching, especially at the Division III level where we wear so many hats, you're doing it because you want to help your student athletes, especially even administrators. We do it because we're here for our student athletes and we want to give them a better opportunity. So I do think we're here, we want to respect everybody on the team. A message that we always send is you don't 100% know if everybody on your team is cisgendered, straight, and, is in a heterosexual relationship. So you can't assume. So part of that respect is using inclusive language for everybody that's involved. But I do think, back to the initial survey is people they want to be better and they want to be allies. They just don't know how to go about it, which is really what the OneTeam program does. Is this is how you go about it. Know your state policies, know your campus policies, and let's figure out what action plans you can take back to your campus and start implementing with your coaches, administrators, and student athletes.
Donna, before we get out of here, I just want to make sure people understand it's not this, elephant in the room here of, oh my God, we got to take on the OneTeam program. If we can just base it down. So if you say, okay, I want to do the OneTeam program in conference, why? What do I have to do?
You send me an email or you send Danielle an email, or you pick up the phone and you call me, or you call, trust me, Danielle and I are not the only ones doing this program. We're very passionate about it. We've done many of them and we will continue to do many. We happen to be pretty good at it, I will say. And but there are many trained facilitators in Division III. So if you want someone on your campus, look, we're in a certain geography of the country. Unless you want to fly us out to your institution, if you're out of driving distance, I'm not sure what the number is, but I'm going to guess there's at least 50 trained facilitators, maybe more, because we've had 2 classes of training in this already. So there's others elsewhere who can certainly do this all around the country. They're just waiting for that call. And that information's on the NCAA website. If you go to the Division III homepage and there's inclusion resources, you will find information about OneTeam. Reach out to Louise McCleary. She'll put you in the right direction too. But Danielle and I are always here to serve.
And how long does the training program take?
Less than 2 hours.
Wow. Okay. Condensed.
Yeah. We go at it. We are intense. And it's a very well designed program. And I think anyone can benefit. Whether you feel like you've had no real experience with members of the LGBT community, or they're very much part of your life. Everyone's going to take something from this program.
Danielle, I want to give you the final word. What message do you want to make sure gets out there?
Well, I think the timing of this is perfect because Happy Pride Month. So it's a great time. We're going into summer. Good time to schedule your, professional development. Donna and I have time over the summer, so this is a great time to get your OneTeam training in, especially during June Pride Month.
Danielle O'Leary, Donna Ledwin, I appreciate your time on an important critical issue that hopefully will continue across all divisions, not just Division III, but of course Division III and your conference, the AMCC, certainly at the forefront of this issue. As always, you can go and Donna mentioned all this information is on ncaa.org, but for our social series, you can go to ncaa.org/social series, where all our social series are archived. Thanks for watching, everyone.